Hi, my name is Greg Robbins. I'm one of the co-founders of Feast Fitness and Nutrition. Today, we're here to talk to you about our group nutrition program and why we think it's so important, and what exactly it is, and why we want you along for the ride with us in terms of participating in our group nutrition program. First, I want to tell you a little bit about me and why I became so interested in nutrition. So when I was 40, I had to have open heart surgery due to a genetic defect that the doctors discovered. So that wasn't really a nutrition driven operation. But one of the really interesting things that happened is as they were prepping me for that heart surgery, they discovered that I actually had pretty significant blockages around in the arteries around my heart, which was really a surprise to me because I'd been a very competitive club sport athlete through my college days. I'd run marathons through my 20s. And through my 30s, I was still running 5 miles a day into work every day with my clothes on my back. So I thought I was in really good shape just due to the exercise I had been undertaking as part of my daily routine. And when I discovered through that process that I actually was not in as good shape as I thought I was from a health perspective, especially a heart health perspective, coming out of that surgery, I really had an opportunity to refocus on that. Happened when I was 40. So I had an opportunity to refocus on what would keep me healthy through my 40s, through my 50s, 60s, and beyond, if I wanted to be here as long as I could for my family and for myself. And so I really began taking a look at what were the most sustainable approaches to fitness and the most sustainable approaches to nutrition going forward. I was lucky enough to meet the core group of coaches that is at Feast. And one of those coaches was nutrition focused at the time. And she really put me on the path towards exploring different approaches to nutrition and how I could improve how I was eating. And it made a ton of sense to me at the time. We've only got you for 1 hour in the gym at Feast. And the question is, what are you doing with the other 23 hours of your day to support your fitness? And what I've discovered, and I think what the rest of the team at Feast has discovered, is that focus on nutrition, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but on sleep as well, has really made a massive impact in our health, far beyond what we could have expected. And frankly, that's even a greater impact than what we get out of our work in the gym at Feast. So just want to forward along the talk to talking about the Crossfit Pyramid. Those of you who are familiar with CrossFit have undoubtedly seen this before, but we wanted to highlight it just to point out that CrossFit as well agrees, if you look at the base of the pyramid here, that nutrition is really the foundational part of any kind of health and fitness regime. We've included a little bit of a revision in this by emphasizing sleep as well, and by pointing out that habit development, we believe, is really the foundation of establishing good nutrition and sleep approaches, and that trying to tackle these things on a one-off basis or without a real plan in place becomes really challenging. And so, again, what are you doing with the other 23 hours of your day when you're not in the gym to support your work in the gym and just to support your health in general? That's really what we're focused on with our group nutrition programming and why we're here talking today. So what exactly is our group nutrition program? Feast Nutrition Defined is really about moving from processed, high calorie, low fiber, low macronutrient, and I'm sorry, those terms are obscured there underneath our picture of potato chips. But that's really what we're talking about: high processed, high calorie, low fiber, low micronutrient foods towards eating minimally processed, low calorie, high fiber, and high micronutrient foods. The question is, how are you going to do it? It's not realistic. We've found through a lot of trial and error, but also the science supports that it's not realistic you're going to make these massive changes overnight. And so what we really want you to focus on, and the way we've designed our group nutrition program to help you focus on, is developing one habit at a time, doing it together in a community, so that you have a chance of maximizing your likelihood of success, but also so that You will incrementally make these changes over time in a way that's super sustainable and something that hopefully you can carry on with the rest of your life. So I just want to take a minute to give a more direct example of what we're talking about when we're talking about each of these two approaches to eating. So you have something concrete to think about as we walk through this. So, what do we mean when we talk about clean and abundant nutrition at Feast in our group nutrition approach? So, our abundant example here is our breakfast. Here you see the breakfast salad that I typically eat for breakfast every day. It's got lettuce, grape tomatoes, baby peppers, some lean protein. In this case, it's some chicken breast and hummus mixed in with it to kind of act as a salad dressing. You've got kabocha squash. You've got mixed berries. And all together, this equates to over 2 pounds of food, 25 grams of fiber, 40 grams of protein, and yet it's only 620 calories. So how do you achieve all of these things with only 620 calories? Well, you eat food that is minimally processed, right? It's got no added sugars. Again, sorry, we've got some language blocked out in the corner here, but basically what it's saying is there are tons of colors in each of these bowls. Colors equal micronutrients, right? So eating as colorful a meal as possible, as often as possible, will get you all the micronutrients you need, will be massively supportive for your health. And then these things are also full of water. So eating in this manner keeps you hydrated, helps with satiety. And then the other thing you've got to ask yourself is how long is it going to take you to eat this food and what are you going to feel like on the other side of eating it? I can tell you from personal experience, because it's high fiber, because there's so much of it, it takes a long time to eat this breakfast. You will chew and chew and chew. And there's a phenomenon called palate fatigue, which is when you chew as much as you need to get through a breakfast like this, your brain, your mouth is telling your brain that you've just eaten a ton of food and that you're very full and just don't need to eat anymore. So this should carry you through easily through lunch and beyond. Again, at only 620 calories and lay a phenomenal foundation for the rest of your day. We're not suggesting you need to be eating a breakfast salad or you need to even be eating this much food at the start of the day, but it's an example of what we talk about when we mean clean and abundant. There's no need to deprive yourself. Eating 2.5 pounds or 2.2 pounds of food first thing in the morning, you will not feel deprived. You'll feel enormously full, in fact. But what's your alternative, and what do we mean when we're talking about more highly processed foods that are low in micronutrients and where a lot of people are eating today? This is kind of an alternative 620 calorie breakfast. You've got an almond croissant and an ice grande skim milk chai tea latte. These are both from a very popular place where people stop to get breakfast. Unlike the previous slide where we're looking at over 2 pounds of food, you've got less than 1/4 pound of food here. You've got 3 grams of fiber as compared to where were we in our prior one? 25 grams of fiber. You've only got 18 grams of protein versus 40 grams of protein. This is also 620 calories, but it's got 55 grams of added sugar. So that's what's happening when we go through the food processing approach to eating, or the more processed food approach to eating, is you typically get a lot of stuff added that adds calories, and at the same time you get fiber taken out, which robs you of your ability to feel full. And then again, if you look at the color of this breakfast, it's beige. So you know right away it doesn't have a lot of micronutrients in it. You're not getting a lot of food diversity. And then how long does this take you to eat? You could crush that croissant in just a couple of minutes, wash it down with your latte there. And my guess is the first thing you're going to think as soon as you finish that breakfast is, I'd like another croissant. So you're robbing yourself of that palate fatigue opportunity. You're robbing yourself of that opportunity to feel super full. And so we just want you to think about the different approaches, kind of what is ultimately, it may seem more challenging to eat the kind of minimally processed stuff out of the gate, but ultimately it's going to make you much more satisfied down the road. So that's what we're talking about from a concrete example when we talk about um, eating a minimally processed, high micronutrient, high fiber diet versus a uh, much higher processed, kind of higher calorie, low micronutrient, low fiber diet. So turning from kind of what it is we're talking about, we want to talk about why you might want to do this beyond just feelings of satiety and eating food that tastes really great. And what do you think some of the benefits this approach might be? Um, and I'll give you a second to think about it, but I'm going to go ahead and scroll the page since we're not together to observe you taking your time to think about this. We think there's a big, long host of benefits. Thing is first, nutrition is actually more important than exercise for long-term health. Again, we talked about this with the CrossFit Pyramid. It's something CrossFit has recognized for a long time. But the reality is you cannot out-exercise your diet. We have you for 5 hours a week. You're going to spend multiple amounts of that eating, drinking, and hopefully sleeping. You're going to learn later on in one of the other seminars that exercise really accounts for a surprisingly small amount of your daily calorie burn. And so if you're not focusing on nutrition, you're really not going to be able to overcome it through exercise. The second thing we'd like you to focus on as a potential benefit are the health gains, both short-term and long-term. There are a ton of studies that have shown a long list of short-term health benefits from improving your nutrition that I think a lot of you will experience right out of the gate if this represents a big change in approach to eating for you. Some of those are a better immune response, better sleep, fewer stomach issues, and better gut health. Fiber feeds a microbiome, and we're still learning a ton about the health benefits of a healthy microbiome to people, but it looks like it's, so far the studies have shown that it's massively important. I think we're going to discover that it's even more important than we already know. You have better mental focus. It cleans up a lot of skin issues for a lot of people. And you decrease unnecessary body fat and bloating and inflammation and energy crashes that come on through kind of eating very quick to process through your body foods that are higher in sugars and that kind of cause that crash effect. So those are some of the short-term benefits. The long-term benefits have also been proven, even though they're harder to see right out of the gate. The main ones are we really drastically decrease our risk of nutrition-related diseases. So what we're talking about here are a host of nutrition-related cancers. When you overfeed your body, it tends to need to do things with that food, and one of the things it does is it feeds the growth of malignant cells. And so some of the cancers that have been directly tied to overeating are colon, breast, kidney, and digestive tract cancers. You also face an increased risk of diabetes, chronic kidney disease, high blood pressure, heart disease, and stroke are all nutrition-related diseases that we think moving to a more feast-type approach to nutrition should help you avoid. There's also the issue of better athletic performance. I mean, that's why we're all here in the gym, right? And so some of the things that happen if you take the feast approach to nutrition is increased lean muscle, increased energy, the ability to do more challenging body weight movements as you lean out, and that means you've got less risk of injury because of less stress on the joints. So those are some of the benefits to better performance in the gym. The other thing we think is a real benefit to the feast approach to nutrition is that it's sustainable for life. You don't need to be perfect to experience some real health benefits of adopting our approach. So we want you to adopt, as we talked before, about incremental habits, right? Little by little, moving towards an approach to eating so that even though maybe you're eating pretty highly processed today and it looks like it would be a long, huge leap for you to get to that minimally processed, high fiber, high micronutrient approach to nutrition, if we do it one habit at a time, the goal is that you kind of look up in 2 years and you didn't even realize you were moving in that direction. And all of a sudden you're eating very much like that breakfast salad we showed earlier. So we don't want you to try to kind of take on the world and totally change all your habits at once. Let's do it slowly. Let's do it together. And we think it's something that will be sustainable. We're not asking for fad diets or cleanses. We think those kinds of approaches that aren't sustainable are really going to be more challenging and possibly going to create bigger setbacks over the long haul. The other reason we think this is sustainable is even if we wind up cutting calories and we find out that a lot of people are actually under eating when they come to us and ask us to really look closely at their nutrition. But even if we wind up cutting calories, by increasing the volume we eat, again, you saw that 2.2 pound breakfast that I typically start my day with, by increasing the protein we eat, by increasing the fiber, and by increasing our healthy fat intake, we actually think you'll feel fuller rather than less full, and you'll really avoid that feeling of deprivation, which is another reason we think it's sustainable. The last thing is we're not asking for perfection. We'll talk about this a little bit more later, but if you can adopt 80% of the feast habits that underlie our approach to nutrition, and you can comply with those about 80% of the time, that should be plenty sufficient to keep you towards a path of a healthy lifestyle that'll help you realize a lot of the benefits we're talking about here. The other thing I want you to consider is behavior modeling. So you may be somebody who just doesn't have a problem with however you eat. We know people in the gym, all of us probably know people outside of the gym who can eat whatever they want and still look pretty healthy, whether they're actually healthy or not, whether there's somebody like me who was at 40, thought I was pretty healthy, but had a little bit of a ticking time bomb going on. But there are some people who can eat whatever they want and still look pretty healthy. If you're one of those people, I guess I just ask you to consider whether your behavior, if you changed it, right, if you moved towards more of a feast approach to nutrition, whether that would present a really nice opportunity for you to model great behavior for your friends and family. Maybe you have a family member who's struggling more with nutrition than you do. Maybe you have colleagues who are trying to change their own approach to nutrition, and if you were to adopt a similar approach, it would really help them along their path towards health. Just something to think about in terms of behavior modeling is important and providing in whatever your community is. Another part of this is really future proofing. And what do we mean by that? Between the 1970s and today, the food industry has gotten very, very good at encouraging each of us to eat the products they produce, right? And that's really their job. So I don't begrudge them that approach, but what they've done, right, is they've spent millions and millions of dollars each year trying to discover ways to make their food extremely craveable, right? And there's a term for it that's called the foods are hyper palatable. So they figured out how to make the human brain want more of their food by the appearance it has on the shelf, by the mouthfeel it has, by the how quickly it's absorbed into the bloodstream, right? It's a science, and they're very, very good at it. And again, that's their job, right? They're employed by their companies to satisfy their shareholders by getting all of us to eat as much of their product as they can encourage us to eat. So their job isn't really to think about our health. And so that falls on us to think about how we're going to protect ourselves as the food companies get better and better at encouraging us to do this. So I'd like you to think about whether you'll be ready for kind of the continuing approach that the food companies are going to take. I'd like you to think about whether your friends and family will be ready for that. One reason this is, just to put a finer point on this, one reason this has become particularly pertinent is you're already seeing the effects of what's happening here from a food manufacturing perspective. According to the World Health Organization and Lancet, 2017 was the first year that more people actually died from overeating than died from a lack of food resources. They tied 17 million deaths worldwide to people having access to more food than they should be consuming. And again, driving a lot of these food-related cancers and things like that we talked about before, diabetes, stroke, heart disease. And it's especially happening in developing countries. But bottom line is, there are benefits to adopting this approach now because companies out there are working to undermine these approaches for their own profit. And again, that's their job. That's what they're supposed to be doing. The other thing I want to just talk about is there are real values to having what we call deposits in the habit bank. So if you can learn how to adopt habits, with respect to nutrition, with respect to sleep, and other things that are part of our healthy habit development, those habits will carry over, or that approach to habit development, learning how to develop good habits, should carry over to other parts of your life and really make you more successful in other things you're trying to accomplish, right? And so if you're somebody who has a hard time with kind of achieving one-off tasks, learning how to instead take kind of a habit-based approach towards things you want to accomplish and experimenting with those through this nutrition approach that we're offering, we think will really help you kind of cross over into other parts of your life where habits might help you achieve the kind of success you're looking for. And then the very last thing we talk about is aesthetics. Not to be too shallow about it, but you can expect a change in your body composition, and it's not terrible to be recognized for looking good. So these are the goods of our approach to feast nutrition. We don't really have any known ills, so why wouldn't you do this? And so just again, talking about the body composition part of this, this is a picture of me at 42, and again, I think at about 48. I'm 50 today, but after adopting our feast approach to nutrition. So why wouldn't you adopt this feast approach to nutrition? I'll just ask you to think about it for a second, and then I'm going to scroll on to the next slide. Basically, because it's really pleasurable. There are a ton of short-term pleasures involved with eating foods that don't support your health, right? And this goes back to the conversation or the point I was just making about food scientists. They've and not all food scientists are bad. I'm a lawyer by training. I don't want to. People have a lot of bad things to say about lawyers. There, in any profession, there are people who are devoting themselves to the health of the profession, and people who are devoting themselves to other things. I just say, I want to make clear, not all food scientists are bad. A lot of them are working towards great solutions to our health. But in any event, the food companies that are interested in selling more of their unhealthy products have done a great job of helping or designing empty carbohydrates and unhealthy fats to look, smell, and taste awesome. I will tell you, when I don't go into McDonald's, but when I'm around people who have McDonald's and you smell those McDonald's French fries, man, they look, smell, and I remember that they taste awesome. They're always around, right? Most people have packaged food on their shelves, or you go out to eat with coworkers. Most people are ordering a side of fries with whatever food they're getting. Everybody eats them, and you don't have to think about what you're putting in your mouth, right? It's harder to take an approach where you're not doing these things. And then a lot of people just think they don't like vegetables, fruit, or other boring tasting foods that are, quote unquote, good for them. There's just kind of a general, I think we all learned it when we were kids, when your parents were pushing the soggy Brussels sprouts on you, that if your parents are insisting you eat it and your gut is telling you, or not your gut, but maybe your baseline approach is, I'm not sure I want to eat this, then, we've all kind of dug in a little bit at some point on whether the healthiest foods are foods we really want to eat. And so, what you've got to ask yourself is, you're recognizing that you are going to have to give up some of the short-term pleasures. And so the question you need to figure out is, are you willing to, most of the time, again, we're not asking for 100% perfection, but most of the time, are you willing to defer that short-term pleasure for long-term gain? And if the answer is, not now, not today, that's okay with us, right? We'd still like you to take a shot at the habits as we roll them out to see how you feel. But if you're skeptical, if you're just not ready right now, that's fine. But we do think if you're willing to give it a shot, we think you'll recognize great long-term gains. You're going to wind up replacing this concept of willpower, which, you think you're going to have to kind of power your way through good choices when you have two good choices, when you have a lot of bad choices in front of you. We recognize that that's just not sustainable. I will tell you, I personally don't have the willpower to walk by a plate of cookies 12 times, especially if I've had a cocktail or two. My willpower will be gone pretty quickly and I'll be eating those cookies, right? And so the question is, how do you replace that effort at willpower with habit and environment so that the easiest choice is your healthy choice? And that's what a lot of what we're trying to do here with our group approach to nutrition is. We also think you'll be able to adopt an outsider approach to big food. I mean, one of the things that a lot of people tell us when they start adopting the feast approach to nutrition is they kind of get made fun of it where people, say, oh, you're the guy who eats this way, or, you're the person who always is ordering a side salad instead of a plate of fries. And we actually think that's kind of cool. Just like people will notice your changes in body composition that go along with that and likely comment on that as well. We think there are real benefits to being one of the outsiders and to talking about that and playing it up. That's one of the things we enjoy. You'll be able to use tips and tricks for meal prep, serving sizes, reading labels, and understanding nutrition terms if you go through our habit approach. So we will help you figure out how to get there with kind of the minimal amount of work. There will be some work involved for you, but you'll be doing it in our community, right? And so one of the things that we do with this group nutrition approach is the habits are designed to be adopted by everyone. They're for everyone. They're kind of the foundation of our group nutrition is that these are universal approaches that if everybody adopts, it should improve their health, kind of regardless of who they are and what stage in life they're at. And then the other thing is you'll get to learn and evolve, right? You'll get to learn about things you like and approaches that work for you. And we're learning and evolving as well. And we're looking forward to learning from you as you go through this process. And if we find things that are working, we promise to adopt more of those, and things that aren't working, we promise to put those aside and go on this journey with you through adapting your healthy habits to getting long-term gains. So that's the approach as to that's the rationale underlying our group nutrition program. We hope you'll stick with it. Check out the next 3 seminars that are coming your way. We're going to cover off on calories, macros, and body comp, meal planning and prep, and healthy habits. But you see here our goal, our mission statement is to serve the lifelong health and happiness of our community. And we think this group nutrition program is a fundamental part of it. So we look forward to having you with us on the journey. And if you've got any questions about this, stop me or any other coach. We'll be happy to talk more. Thanks.